Good afternoon. This is June, what is the date?
17th.
June 17th. This is the Harbor Management Commission Plan Update Committee meeting. I'm in the first floor conference room at Town Hall with Don Hyman and Doug Metchick and Jeff Stedman. We'll call this meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So what I thought we'd do today, the plan that I have is that we will go through this list today of the various places in the harbor, identify projects so that, or potential projects, so that we can mention them in the harbor management plan, with the idea that should there be no new legislation which to clarify the Cohen v. Deep decision by the two Connecticut courts, that we would then have in our harbor management plan some discussion about potential projects that future harbor commissions might be called upon to comment on. And if those projects are included in the plan, then Deep and the courts have both said that they would then pay attention to any comments on those projects that a harbor commission might have. If those projects are not mentioned specifically in a harbor management plan, the courts and Deep have consistently said then we don't have to pay any attention to comments that are offered by harbor management commissions. So the purpose of today's meeting would be to go through these geographic areas and brainstorm a bit about things that residents, that the town, that the yacht club, that the country club, I can't think of another participant who might be seeking a deep permit, but certainly that any of those groups seeking deep permits for any kind of projects in those specific areas would want that the future harbor management commissions would have the opportunity to comment and present their ideas and suggestions to Deep about those projects. So my thought is that we would do that today. This is the new Chapter 7. It would be the last chapter in the plan, that we would then adjourn for 2 or 3 months and give Jeff a chance to write up.
Interrupting you, I know, but the last chapter, though, that we talked about is the implementation chapter, where we're going to talk about the responsibilities of the Harbor Commission to review and comment on Deep applications, and that we were going to put into that chapter the language that Deep has approved in other towns.
Right.
That Deep has to listen to the Commission's recommendations.
Right.
So when we've been talking about this in other towns that are updating their plans, is to try to have and also as you learned, and I've learned, or at least been told, that substitute bill that we objected to was not passed this session. And so now we're going to contact Deep and hold them to their word that they will discuss a better bill with us before the next legislative session.
Right.
So we talked about having a group, and I was going to ask you if you'd like to participate in that discussion with Deep.
Sure.
Representative of the Harbor Commission here. And there'd be someone from Norwalk and from New London, and also Greenwich and Stamford. But so that's what we're trying to set that up now, a discussion group, or whatever we call it.
Great.
Work with Deep. Deep said that they would.
Great.
So
great.
Let's see if they hold.
So let's see if they hold to it. But what I was going to say was that after we get done with this chapter, we would give you, Jeff, time to write up.
Yes.
And we would take a break while Jeff writes up, and then come back and review what Jeff has written. And I'm open to the notion of presenting chapter by chapter to the full commission, or waiting and giving them the whole package to review. But in any event, and that's not a decision we have to make today, but in any event, before anything can happen, the full commission has to see a plan that we've okayed, and that before it goes out to DEEP and then to the RTM.
And the other
And the
thing was
first selectman.
these specific areas. I've been talking with the Port Authority people, and they said we should expect that there will be another round of these SHIP grants this year.
Great.
So if we're talking about recommendations for specific areas, if we can come up with a project. But of course, we also need to return the money, which is...
Before, yeah. But we're fairly confident that that's just an administrative...
This is the Port Authority calling.
Oh, go.
Did you mind?
No.
Very interesting.
No.
We
So,
have to do it before the end of the month.
say what?
I think the money needs to be returned before the end of June because of the fiscal year.
Oh, I have no idea. I just know that the controller, who was the person who would have to write the check, has been on vacation or out for a couple of weeks. So it's not for want of trying. So I made a quick stab at some of these areas. I'm not sure, we just start from the top. Think about Southport Inner Harbor, the first area, and then the Federal Navigation Channel. I think we just want to continue working with the Country Club of Fairfield and the Corps.
Yeah.
I don't know what else, if there's anything else, the Inner Harbor.
I made a few comments
Okay,
alongside some of your comments.
okay,
I think you've got it all covered, so this may be sort of redundant. One that I had in your, the note Federal Jetty, which is like your third or fourth bullet point
yep, it's the
down
1,
in
2,
the
3,
Inner
yep,
Harbor.
yep,
As I look at the Federal Jetty, which I think extends until the federal wall starts, right?
yeah.
So the jetty goes to the wall, and some of that jetty is under sand now?
Correct.
So I wondered whether we should have support, maintenance, and repair of the Federal Jetty. We just have Federal Jetty, we have support, maintenance, and repair in other areas. We don't know what might transpire if that jetty was damaged, or stormed, or other things, I don't know.
Great idea. No, I agree.
I added that to it. On the town, yacht yard and town boat yard, I also added maybe support, repair, and maintenance of ramp.
Of,
The ramp,
The launch ramp.
oh, yeah,
to that, so just at the end of your repair and replacement
Yeah.
dock and dredging, that was one that I had added.
on the town boatyard, Cheryl has mentioned, several times the need to have a drone policy. I don't know, a drone policy, I don't know that that we want to include that here. I don't.
It seems to me that that's not the jurisdiction of the HMC, that whatever the town's drone policy is,
Yeah.
or public marine.
Or the FAA's policy,
Yeah.
that's pretty clear.
I thought it was their space.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, okay.
I had mentioned in an email to all of you, the idea of exploring some kind of an exhibit that would speak to the past of Yee Yacht Yard.
Yep,
And its marine history.
right,
No more than that, not a detailed plan, just the notion of putting it out there as something to explore so that we can capture that story in a more meaningful way than is presently being done, and not rely simply on an obsolete name, which
well,
which we're not using.
Part of what this committee did, and you were part of that, and I think you were part of that too, was we talked about, taking the Southport past, present, and future, making little nuggets of
Yes,
recording, plaques, that kind of thing. Seems to me that's where that would come.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Does it need to be stated in our plan, or for other, I don't know that it's gonna be done won't be done this year.
Yeah, yeah,
It's an element that should not be forgotten and put there so that future commissions know we thought about this.
yeah,
And whether we use that or something else, the fact is that we tell the story of Ye Yacht Yard
Yeah.
in a better way than is now done. To be determined. We know that the museum is interested in this kind of thing. The Southport Association is definitely interested in it. They've done it elsewhere.
Well,
That's all. It's a placeholder, not a
the only
detail.
comment I would add to that, because I do think it's interesting, is maybe that's more broadly around other aspects too. Like I understand where Perry Green is actually used to be a wharf. The buildings that are on Pequot are there now because there were buildings that were there and burnt down. North where Pequot is. So what I wonder is whether,
So broadening it?
yeah, and I don't mean like sort of townwide in a historic society sense, but I mean across the harbor area. Because
Well,
the
the
lower
low-
wharf, Perry Green, where Pequot Yacht Club sits, all have their own history too.
Right.
Yeah,
That I think would
Right.
be probably equally as equally as
Absolutely.
interesting.
yeah,
Right.
no, I think that's a good point. And we've toyed with the idea at different times, but I think it's important enough to make a note of it somehow without overly defining it or putting any specs into it that would become burdensome, but just revisiting and exploring the idea of telling the marine history of Southport Harbor in a better way.
well,
where-
there is no way, except for the one presentation that Jeff's done, it really hasn't been,
There's some faded
In-
photographs in that glassed-in.
it's everywhere,
It's
yeah, but
junk.
not,
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm not,
Yeah.
Is that a chapter 7 thing, or is that a
no,
plan thing?
no, because this is for,
This is area specific.
this is
right?
area specific where somebody is gonna be asking DEEP for a permit to do something. Construction, building, renovation, repair in that area. But that idea, I mean, I guess that would be something that the whole commission should, get its arms around
Yeah.
and support. I mean, let's tell the history of this, of the whole harbor.
yeah.
I mean, when Bruce was a kid, the Lower Wharf was a privately owned property, and the Cunningham, what was his name? Used to have a monster boat that he docked right there.
Well, yeah.
So, I mean,
I say this for two reasons. One, the story is worth telling, capturing,
Absolutely.
sharing with the public. For a harbor management commission, we need simply recognize that and report it and suggest that our successors think about this and collaborate with community organizations and other areas of town government that are like-minded. That's all.
yeah,
At one point in my discussion with Jeff on why he is attached to Town Boatyard, it was because, he said, it was to pay tribute to the earlier history of that land. Well, if we're not going to use Town Boatyard because we've been told not to use Town Boatyard and because it's inaccurate today, let's do justice to that idea.
well, to the whole area,
Yeah,
the whole
to-
area, I agree. Perry Green and even the yacht club area, you're right, I mean, that's, you know.
Yeah, I'm not saying we
And then
define
we-
the exhibit, I'm
Yeah.
saying we,
Yeah, and maybe the harbor itself, or maybe navigation, I don't know. But I think, anyway, I think the interest
Is there.
the harbor,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
right, so we can revisit this with the man who's gonna write that.
On the yacht yard, I had a couple of other
Oh, good.
questions around it.
okay,
One, we have repair and replacing of dock, and I wonder if we should make it plural, because there really are, there's the
Yep.
dock where the community sailing is off of on that side of the yacht yard, and then there's the dock by the ramp, so I
Doc's
thought
good,
dock's
yep,
plural.
yep,
And then I also wonder in this, whether we should say repair, replacing, or reconfiguring docks. And that may be controversial with reconfiguring, but one, depending on dredge or not dredge, maybe the town first responders are looking for a place to put a boat. I don't really know what might be involved in reconfiguring any of these docks, but it might just be beyond repair and replace. So I've sort of
I think
count that more than state it,
Yeah,
but if it's in there, it could
I agree,
be more open or.
Give ourselves the latitude to react and do things if we need to.
right.
Yes.
Well, and I guess, I mean, I guess the one other thing that, suppose we can't dredge, replace, and repair, do we want to make, and I don't know, Jeff, if somebody was gonna provide a launch service through the town boatyard, would that be would DEEP have to get involved, or the Corps?
No, sorry, this was the Port Authority talking about what we're doing, but my thoughts to begin with at the yacht yard is, you also have to note that this has to be managed as a public landing pursuant to the navigation project authorization and the harbor management plan, and that non-residents have to be able to buy a daily launching permit.
Right.
For using the launching ramp. And I think those are the only two requirements that I can think of. And also, if a non-resident gets a mooring permit, then they are able to get a parking sticker, and I don't know also about a space for a dinghy to have access to the mooring location. But there were three things that were necessary, at least that I can remember: the public landing, the access for people who get non-residents who get a mooring permit, and the non-residents to be able to use the launching ramp. But the existing plan specifies how that has to be operated.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
But we were talking about, Doug is suggesting on the town, the boatyard, repair, replace, and configuring of, support, repair, replacing, and reconfiguring of the docks, dredging in and around the dinghy docks, plural, maintenance, repair of the launch ramp.
And then I'd actually have one more, which I was saying, which is a question: policies that maintain public access, because that was in the note above. Higher up, I think, is it related to the Anchorage or something access, which made me think there's two other places. I'll also say it again when we get to Pequot, but we may want to just include supporting policies that maintain public access.
Yeah.
In that one too, in the event again, just to broaden what our.
Right.
This may be arcane, but, we now have, we didn't in 1995, a town kayak rack right next to that
Right.
ramp. And there is room for, some 21 kayaks, something like that. That those people now have access to the harbor and public access. Is that something that we need to, refer to when you're talking this way, such as, or is it beyond the scope of what we're talking about totally?
No, that would be included in that chapter that describes, what is it, chapter 3, chapter 2, that describes what's going on in the harbor? Chapter 2, because we didn't have the community sailing then either.
You didn't have community, so you didn't have a town kayak rack.
Right, so that would all be included in that chapter.
Okay.
And we also, of course, have to mention that responsibility for management is with the Parks and Rec
Right,
Commission. But we support these.
Support the policies.
the policy, right.
The
Well, because,
reconfiguration of the docks is necessary as appropriate, something like that.
right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not calling for reconfiguration. I could just see.
No, but I think you're-
the time window here, dredging, not dredging, other
Yeah.
change that the docks made. What happens if they're gonna
We have to think 30
take a
years
different
ahead. a
form or
little
shape
bit.
or whatever?
right, totally agree.
Is that also mention emergency access for emergency services, and that we reserve? Who brought that up?
Oh, yeah, that came.
Oh, Brian brought that up,
Brian
because the fire department wanted to dig,
And I had brought it up to see if we could use that as a
Yeah.
lever for dredging.
yeah. So do we need to, yeah, okay, and mention emergency services.
Support appropriate act. And of course, Brian told us.
Maybe emergency services becomes its own point within Inner Harbor, the way we have like Federal Jetty and Country Club and Perry Green. Maybe emergency services becomes its own point.
Well, certainly is. We talked about the safety drill, and so this area is the command center, if you will, and point to take in and out of.
Right.
So it does serve
The
as
line could be like support
emergency access.
policies and projects.
Yes.
Or policies, projects in support of maintaining, adequate emergency service, access to emergency services.
Now, that begins with a policy and then at specific locations where that,
Yeah.
yes.
Water lot and Lower Wharf?
I had two on Lower Wharf. Water lot seemed pretty straightforward to me. On Lower Wharf, one where we say maintain dock, again, I'm not trying to be technical, I'm trying to be broad. I don't know whether we should call it a dock or a pier or both.
Well, why don't we say docks and piers?
That's what I was thinking, that we may want to include some broader language in there.
We don't have a permit for a dock now. We have a permit for rebuilding
The pier,
The pier.
yeah. And then, what about in Lower Wharf, the walls? Is there maintaining a wall the way we have maintaining
The
the
bulk.
wall in other areas?
I mean, the bulkhead
Yeah,
kind of thing?
yep.
That's part of our permit.
That's part of the
Yeah.
permit, yeah.
Repair
So,
of the.
So I thought that would be an area-specific thing.
walls, and actually, there's also part of that permit, I believe, isn't it, is to kind of fill in the holes where the,
Mhm.
so,
Yeah.
I don't know how you would describe that.
Yeah.
Walls and land, walls and,
Well, on the land one, and the next one, this is a question mark that I have, which is public access, as it relates to Lower Wharf. I feel like there was a few places where I wrote in sort of public
Yeah.
access, because filling in might be maintaining safety, public access.
public
and related
safety
things.
and access.
Yeah,
With the recognition that there's no parking provided for this area, certainly along Harbor Road.
Right.
Can we go back to because Jeff was out of the room talking Port Authority, and this so relates to his expertise on history.
Yep.
Can we just refresh him or revisit that, or is it just in the, when you were out of the room, we were talking about how we thought just as a simple point of action for the future to consider is capturing the harbor history for areas including Lower Wharf, Yacht Yard, Perry's Green, in exhibits or other means for the future, so that the marine history of the harbor is available for the public to understand, rather than simply relying on a name. We're not going to use Town Boatyard anymore. Let's tell the full story in some way.
I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah.
And there's different ways of doing that. And when we talked about that originally with the Historic District Commission, they were adverse to the wayside signs on the pedestals and so forth. I don't know that they would be any different now, but using that wall along the Yacht Yard building to tell a story. And that's one of the reasons that I've been assembling the historical photos. And I asked Mary's daughter about that. But yes, I believe that would be a good thing to do, and we could certainly do that very, very easily.
We have partners that are interested. Sasquatch Association has already approached me on that, and the museum are interested. They've done a wonderful job using QR codes to
Yeah.
allow you to see what you can't see right in front of you.
Right.
Interestingly, it's the blessing of the fleet, so Sasquatch is merged with the Southport Conservancy now.
Right.
And we had a nice talk about the work that we're doing on the research on the history of the navigation project and relating it to the Corps of Engineers history. And, Aiden and I are going to have a discussion with some of the people at Yacht Club. But they were the people that Pam Toner was there and another fellow. But yes, they're very interested in telling.
So you're already working on that?
Yes.
Okay.
So our thought was, I think I speak for the group, to include as a point in the area under Yacht Yard, exploring storytelling and history exhibits that tell the history of Southport Harbor. Not as a defined plan, specifics to come, but as a point.
I think that's part of the policy of the plan, is public outreach and education and providing information to inform the public and to preserve the knowledge of the history of the.
That would do it better, if we're doing away with the name Town Boatyard, as we've been told to do, this becomes a better way to tell that story.
But remember, when we describe the work, describe the history of it, it's described as a boatyard. It may not be the name of it, but it was a boatyard, and that has.
Small b, small y.
Yeah, small b, small.
Well, that should certainly be part of the history,
Right.
but the title for the property is Town Boatyard. It's D-I-R.
Okay, Perry Green, Country Club Lagoon,
On Perry Green, even though they just did all this work on the wall,
yeah,
I think we should
Yep.
include it again, repair and maintenance, just,
support,
I think we're looking at long time windows here.
yep,
And then there's also the issue of the management of the mooring locations off the green, and how that administration is handled different than the other moorings in the harbor.
so we want to do more than maintain the moorings, maintain and assist with mooring
Yeah, there has
administration?
to clarify how it's administered, but remember, I gotta think how Parks and Rec handles that. And those moorings, I believe, are restricted to town residents, but I'm not.
I think that's right,
However that administration is, but they also they have to pay a mooring permit fee.
right,
Every boat in the harbor has to pay
Right.
that. So we have to specify, I
Would it
think.
sort of just be like a supporting policy thing like the others, like support town policies regarding moorings adjacent to Perry Green?
why not? Can we, yeah, yeah.
Whatever the situation is now is the.
Well, I can imagine sometime in the future, they'll say that's, we don't want to maintain those anymore, let's give them to the Harbor Commission, since they maintain everything else in the harbor, so, yeah. So let's just,
And then there's also the deed that controls the use of Perry Green as well. I think we've referenced that in the existing plan.
right, do we have to,
It just referenced that, use and management consistent with the property deed, something.
okay. The yacht club,
Sorry, I'm just.
yeah,
again,
go
I'm
ahead,
thinking
yep,
about
yep,
That's an interesting point that makes me realize that where we say support deed restrictions, that, for example, with the water lot or in Lower Wharf, I wonder whether we want to say support deed and related restrictions, not just supporting the restrictions. We want to support.
Maybe you don't say we support the restrictions, but the properties have to be managed in accordance with the deed.
Yeah. It could be just support deed requirements or even just support deed.
support deed, yeah, and leave it at that.
Yeah, I think so.
The Country Club Lagoon, there's a tide gate there that has to be maintained
Right,
properly. And then we also talked about, supporting, golf course maintenance practices that don't contribute pesticides or materials or whatever that get into the harbor and could degrade water quality. That's something we might want to consider, encourage. And, someone was just telling me that, some environmental group has done a review of golf courses,
oh, it's terrible.
and, the runoff, and the ones they found, and I don't know if Country Club of Fairfield was on the list, I don't know.
Well, remember when they did the wall, when they repaired the wall? There was a lot of, in that permit application, there was a lot of talk about being environmentally sensitive. They did, the country clubs mentioned that in their application to DEEP.
That was interesting, that we didn't see that application, the most recent one. And it didn't specify that the country club doesn't own the wall.
Right.
The federal government owns the wall. And I think that's something that we need to recognize in the plan. The country club has the right to do maintenance on it, which it's always done. But as someone mentioned, the lawyer from the Corps, they have permission to maintain the federal structure, but that doesn't give them any ownership rights. You can't transfer ownership rights to the federal structure.
But does it matter for purposes of our chapter, if we're just gonna say we're gonna support the country club's efforts to maintain and be environmentally friendly?
Oh, yes, but I think we ought to support the country club's, maintenance of the federal wall.
Oh, let's just say it that way, yeah.
Not to make and again, we're not making a statement about
Right.
the controversial issue of the rest of the federal ownership, just the wall.
Okay,
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
the maintenance of the federal wall, and then also what we're referring to as the drainage flap is really more than that.
it's a tide gate.
It's the whole,
Right. It's,
yeah.
yeah.
What
Yeah.
would we call it? Is it the tide gate?
Is it a tide gate?
Tide gate? Tide
Okay,
gate?
okay, I didn't know,
I'm pretty sure it is, so I'll double check the name.
Okay. well, I just put down drainage flaps because that's what it looks like, but, yeah,
But it has a flapper tide gate on it,
okay.
right?
I mean, and Deep was so, when we took the folks from Deep out to look at, before the dredging, to look at the bump and the channel and stuff, they couldn't get enough of that drainage flap. I mean, you would have thought that thing was engraved in gold and was gonna be something that was gonna be in their offices, they were so interested, so I think we need to
It
mention.
creates the pond inside the complex.
Yeah. And at low tide, it opens and the water flows out, but they were like, ooh. So we gotta mention it.
What did you say about the jetty?
Doug said,
We said support, maintenance, and repair.
And then as far as working with the club to come up with measures to reduce the volume of sand going over the jetty, we'll address that in the outer harbor where we talk about.
Yeah, I have a
Yeah.
note, I have a note on that on the
Yeah.
outer harbor.
yeah,
I actually put that note on Sasco Beach, not the jetty. But anyway, I have a note in outer harbor to. I had one additional comment just on the inner harbor list, which was
Okay.
in the area of Pequot Yacht Club in Anchorage.
yep,
I wasn't really sure how to phrase it, but my note says support efforts to deliver its responsibilities as part of the HMP, things like transient moorings, pump out, public access.
Yep.
So there's some aspect of Pequot that's a party, the harbor, that they, provide services. They need to provide some public access, right?
yeah,
So I wasn't really sure how to encapsulate it. I just felt like there may be policies or things that are happening that are area specific to Pequot related to that.
Yes, and some of that is specified in the permit for the yacht club.
but don't we have that again in chapter 2 where we describe the relationship between the yacht club's legal responsibilities and the,
I think that's a descriptive.
okay,
But
This
this,
is
Here-
something that they have, that it's a policy or
okay,
right, because this would be an area-specific thing. I've
Okay.
been using the litmus test of area-specific things that might require funding or permits.
yep.
That was kind of
the pump out facility, the public use of the service dock.
transient moorings.
Transient moorings, and then the stuff that was not, to provide certain boating services to the general public. And that's in accordance with the agreement. that
Right,
Sunset tours,
the
booze cruise, sunset booze cruise.
But-
what?
We could do sunset booze cruises out of Pequot.
That wasn't anticipated in the original agreement.
We're on the record.
But the yacht club has provided a tremendous service to the Harbor Commission with respect to managing the moorings and doing the inspections and doing that for cost. That agreement, it's an annual agreement.
Right,
It's continued unless it's changed.
right,
But the responsibilities of the yacht club for assisting the Harbor Commission with managing the harbor in the public interest pursuant to the agreement, the annual agreement with the town, and the conditions of its state and federal permits. but we support, you know, the continued use of the anchorage for the yacht club, which we did in the original plan, as necessary to maintain the viability of the yacht club.
Right,
As a water-dependent use.
right.
I think there's also a requirement somewhere that they're supposed to have a sign about the vessel pump out. And the sign is supposed to be down at the, you know, at the public dock somewhere. They're supposed to have it. I have to go back and look at the permit for that. I don't know.
There is a sign there.
What's that?
At your yacht yard, is there a sign?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you meant at Pequot Yacht Club.
I thought there was supposed to be another one down at the entrance to the harbor. I'll double check.
Yeah, okay.
I've seen such a sign at South Benson.
About Pequot, or
No,
about the one at,
No, about.
the one there? Yeah. So, Inner Harbor Shoreline, Town Boatyard, yacht yard to Perry Green.
I don't know what we,
I said no private dredging, but,
well, that's an interesting one.
right?
That was, who was the fellow that bought Mr. Robart's house?
Yeah,
I forget the name.
yeah, he wanted to dredge.
He wanted to dredge
Which
it.
is up in the north part of the anchorage?
Hmm?
In the north part of the anchorage, you're talking?
No,
No,
down by
about-
facing the Robart's Pier.
South.
Oh,
Oh, out in the outer,
Mr. Bell, I believe his name was.
yes,
So-
yes, and the subsequent owner also wanted to dredge.
Yes, but deep does not consider residential dredging, where it hasn't been dredged before, as a, I guess, approvable project. But Mr. Bell was allowed to submit an application. Remember, that held up our dredging project many years ago. Who knows what would have happened? But deep required him to do an analysis of the bottom and the shellfish resources. And since they were doing that with him, they went back and told the Harbor Commission that we had to analyze the shellfish by the boat launching ramp and the docks, and that held up the project. But maybe we do want to say that.
Well, I mean, we don't, I mean, I believe that as a commission, we don't support the private dredging anywhere in the harbor. And nor do we want anybody over on Kenzie Point to be doing it. And I think we have to
Say
say it,
This is the time.
right?
For all the reasons we know.
Right?
I mean, what about the policy of one dock and/or mooring? Now, that's in the mooring regulations,
Yeah.
or the rules and procedures.
Well, and that's part of the reason why I think this no private dredging is important.
But we keep that in the rules and procedures.
Right.
One dock.
Right.
I don't know if we
Right.
put that in the plan now.
But remember, when we had all those special meetings with the attorney representing, his feeling was that you ought to be able to have moorings and dredge in the north of the North Anchorage. And that's why I'm suggesting here, and we said at the time that the town should not be responsible for
You know,
paying for moorings, paying for the tackle and mooring for somebody to assert their riparian rights in areas that are not appropriate for moorings. And so I think we need to say that.
It's interesting, a long talk with the Darien Harbor Master yesterday, or the day before. And so that attorney has been retained by a prominent person in Darien. And they're arguing about the littoral rights. And the argument that's being made by this attorney and his clients, remember, is that littoral right should be considered a right of 24-hour access.
Right.
Based on whatever boat you want to have. So if
And not the other way
If you
around.
don't have a mooring, then you should be able to dredge to get the access. And I think that's something that we want to, I think, make clear in the policy somewhere that, and we did when we were talking about this with that property over by Perry Green, that the littoral right is not an absolute right. And it doesn't guarantee 24-hour access. It's a right of reasonable access based on the circumstances of the particular property.
Right. So since all of that in the north of the North Anchorage, or since much of that is mudflats,
Natural area, yes.
at low tide, I don't think we don't want the town to have to buy mooring tackle to put in areas where you can't be moored for
Yes.
several hours a day because it's mudflats.
Or because the property owner now wants a bigger boat that they
Right.
can have access to at all
Right.
stages of the
Right.
tide to dredge the area.
Right.
Yeah, cart before horse.
Right, so that's why I think in the Pequot Yacht Club, the Tide Mill Dam, Inner Harbor Shoreline Town,
Yes.
we need to say that.
Now, the failed channel, though, is a little bit different, because that has been dredged in the past.
Well, but that only really provides access to one dock,
Yes, but it was,
right? I mean,
but
that's,
in terms of natural areas that have not, yes, along the shoreline, the plan does not support dredging of those areas, because those areas have natural value, including shellfish resource value.
right.
As you know, interestingly, getting off the topic here, but that attorney also represented a very prominent political person in Stamford, who had a estate, I guess, in Chapin next to a public access right-of-way. And at low tide, people would walk off at the public access right-of-way and fan out and go fishing. So the property owner built a chain link fence from his edge of his property out into the water, not across the right-of-way, but out into the sound, so people could not walk out and walk in front of his property. And Deeb, anybody else that would have told him to take it down right away, he didn't take it down, and eventually argued that he should be able to apply for a permit. And his argument was that he was not blocking public access, but protecting public safety, because the rocks offshore of the property were very slippery, and they were worried that people would slip and fall. And at a meeting of the Harbor Commission, the fellow's property caretaker blurted out that they don't speak English and they talk really loud when we're out at the pool. So this went through the DEP public hearing process. And then the property owner appealed the DEP's decision to deny his permit to the Superior Court. He lost. He appealed it to the appellate court, which didn't take it, the case. So he had to remove, but in the years it took to do this, the fence remained in place until the fellow passed away of old age and sold the property, and the next guy had it. But anyway, that's the argument of littoral rights can be somewhat self-serving but anyway.
So the other thing I thought we might add is, Aquarian has gotten 2 permits to divert water from the Mill River down to Greenwich and places like that. And I'm thinking
Very, very good.
that we want to suggest that can already take 14 million gallons a day from the Mill River. And that any more than that is going to negatively impact the harbor. The sand is not going to be, that we might.
I'm still imagining with 14 million gallons.
So what?
I'm still imagining with 14 million
I
gallons.
know. Can you imagine? I mean, it's mind-blowing.
I didn't know.
It's mind-blowing.
Well,
But we certainly don't want them to take any more.
Aquarian's first proposal for the diversion was to divert water from the Norwalk River watershed in Wilton.
Right.
Something like 1 million gallons a day. And they were arguing that because they said that if we don't get approval for this, we'll have to divert it from the Hemlocks Reservoir, and we're not sure if we can meet then the stream water flow requirements. But then, of course, they withdrew the Norwalk one, they went to the Hemlocks like this one, and proposed withdrawal of much more. And
Which they got.
And saying, oh, it won't affect the stream water requirements, or the stream flow requirements. But that's very good to put something in there.
Yeah.
We know
I
that.
had even an additional one beyond that.
Oh, good.
Not specific to Aquarian, but other non-Aquarian, so I just wrote the words, impact of other upland development on the Mill River shoreline in Southport Harbor. Thinking like future Exide plant, or maybe
Good
the
idea.
property on the opposite shore of the Mill River, whatever that may be.
And we know that Aquarian is seeking to divest itself from
Is what?
Aquarian. Aquarian would like to get out of Aquarian.
Yeah.
Bill Gerber has a whole legal campaign stop
The
that.
clearing is owned by Eversource. They wanted to Eversource wanted to get rid of it, I think.
Right, right. But the point is, whoever owns it, we don't want them taking any more water from the
Exactly.
river, because it has a negative impact.
So I'm saying if we say Aquarian or its successors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the other thing, the Shellfish Commission is concerned because there's about bacteria coming down the Mill River, and I don't know if we want to, I think that's related to Doug, your statement about other upland development. Do we need to?
And on other upland development, I think it's worth saying shore of Mill River and Southport Harbor.
Yeah.
To the extent that the Mill River is part of the jurisdiction.
There are roadways and bridges that cross the Mill River. I'm thinking of the Post Road and I-95 and the Metro North Line and other bridges. And I think it would be good to have a policy that I think we didn't have it in the existing plan, but work to repair or replace those bridges should be done in a way that avoids direct discharge of highway pollutants or direct discharge into the Mill River.
Good. Can we mention Porsche dealerships specifically too, or do we just assume that's not planned development?
No. I'd like to forget about that one.
Okay. So Tide Mill Dam, you have talked with Tim Bishop and...
That's very interesting. I don't know quite how, but the DEP has talked with the property owner. One thing that the required dam inspection permit is past due, but the concerns about the deterioration of the dam and the one missing tide gate, and to his credit, the DEP guy came down to assess the situation, talk with the property owner. They're now working on cooperatively to come up with a new design for tide gates to allow fish passage at certain times of the year. And DEP believes that they can find the funds, at least this is what they said last week, to do this. And I don't know how they've monitored it, but they said that there's more fish upstream than there have been in the past because of that missing tide gate. And that, so the DEP Fisheries Division is quite enthusiastic about doing some new structure there that allows fish passage at certain times of the year. And they asked if the town would be interested in being a third party to an agreement with the property owner. Not for maintenance, but just to observe and check out what's going on and whether the agreement is being complied with. And Tim Bishop said he's already talked with two people from DEP, met on the site. The design has to be, of course, developed. It has to be permitted properly. But it's something that the town is interested in not having responsibility for maintenance, but being involved in an agreement. And so both Tim and Bill said, when I mentioned that we're updating the plan, there's room in here to put a recommendation that could be supportive of a ecologically, or a properly designed structure that accomplishes those different objectives.
Good.
Tim had, but I think we should mention it in here.
Yeah.
Support provided it can be done in a way that is environmentally sound, something like that.
Well, if they don't do it now, it's very possible they'll think about doing it again in another 10 years.
And the plan can provide support for doing that. And we've been responsive to the upstream property owner who expressed concerns about the water level. And DEP said that they recognize that it would have to be designed so it's not open all year round.
Right.
But it's open when the fish are spawning, moving.
Anything else about the inner harbor?
But that's a good thing about the diversion.
Outer harbor. Federal Navigation Channel.
That's
The dredging.
Maintenance of it.
Yeah.
Have to start that process.
Yep.
Is is the rising tide, the rising level of the sound that's projected, is that implicit in all this, understood by all parties, and doesn't need to be referred to?
I think that's referred to in,
We have a policy concerning resilience.
yeah, our resilience
So
policy.
that would overarch this,
Yeah. Near shore dredge material placement area. Well, we already know that that's not gonna happen, that's, all that sand that was dredged is dispersed at a rate that it's making it impossible to create a shellfish habitat.
But it's still within the natural littoral area.
Okay,
So I think it's still something that would be an area to place future sandy dredge material
oh, okay,
from the harbor channel.
oh, I like that,
Because the
Yeah.
argument was that the Corps made is if it doesn't stay in place to allow us to plant oysters, it's still within the natural littoral system, and we're not interfering with that system.
so we'll support the area use as a
It's continued use as a
place for
placement
dredging,
sandy dredge material.
okay.
I don't know if they figured that was going to, I don't know if they determined where that sand was going, or whether it was going to Southport Beach or not, but,
Well, if the tide's moving everything from east to west, it ought to go over, would think it would not all end up on, I hope it doesn't all end up on Southport Beach, or you'll be able to walk out to Amark out there. Country Club Beach, you had,
Yeah, I had two comments here.
good,
Encourage CCF to get permit to move beach sand, maintain federal jetty, kind of in the way that we're talking about maintaining the wall, but I don't know if that's an overreach or not. I just wanted to ask the question. And then also, part of the moving the beach sand is to prevent encroachment of the federal harbor, in addition to just moving the sand to their beach, but it might be related to the jetty and encroachment on the harbor.
work with the country club to design an appropriate plan. This goes back to the sand management plan, because the jetty to be maintained. It's like you were saying. I think we should have a discussion with the country club, though, because one approach is again, moving sand away from the edge, both above the mean high water and below, and moving it back on the beach. That's normal jetty maintenance.
I don't know that there's anything else that's all in the country clubs.
Joe Reynes have you talked with him about this?
No,
He had an example of some project on Long Island, and in the wintertime, on the beach, they build sort of snow fencing.
oh, yeah,
Perpendicular to the shore, but along the beach. But again, that's not our issue is the wave washed sand
Yeah.
over here.
over the jetty.
yeah, and it's the country club's area, it's not, we can only encourage them to do things, we can't. Sasko Beach?
Same, well, what I have on Sasko Beach is saying support efforts to mitigate sand migration over federal jetty or channel to inner harbor. That was the addition that
I wonder, does the town have a permit to, does the town,
They have a beach management permit of some sort, which talks about the amount of sand that they can have on this beach and others. So that's what we used when we said that this was not a suitable place to put the dredge material from the channel.
right,
Because the profile of the beach is already higher than what that their permit allows them to do.
so do we want to refer to that permit? Support, town have to periodically apply for it?
Ask
Yeah.
for it.
I'm just thinking, and I'm very unknowledgeable about this area, but I've learned from other engineers that the big problem with filling in our harbor is sand that washes over the jetty.
Right,
Okay. So, is it possible to make the jetty taller? I know that's,
no, and it's something that we have It's probably come up in every harbor management
We
commission,
talked about it.
yeah.
I know
To make the
it's a lot of work.
To make the jetty taller, we first need a federal act to study the costs and benefits. And then depending on what the costs and benefits are, we could consider that perhaps, well, then we have to get the money to raise it. And historically, the Corps of Engineers said that since there's no commercial operation in the harbor, it would be very hard to see how the federal government could determine if there's a benefit to doing it. And that's why our dredging project is not based on a cost-benefit assessment, because it would fail the Corps' assessment. So the Corps gets some special appropriations from time to time. But yeah, we looked at it, and now it's even, less likely that there'll be, in the next few years, that there'll be federal money available for these things. But it was looked at as an onerous process involving first the authorization of funds to do a study with the cost benefits, and then they've been trying to, they had a study to discuss the benefits of deepening New Haven Harbor, the federal government, and that study started like 10 years ago, and they still haven't done the actual work, and that's a commercial entity.
Is there any, I mean, we're can't think 3 years out, we have to think 25, 30 years out.
Yeah.
Is there any point in having language that says explore the concept or explore the idea of increasing the height of the jetty to prevent sand from flowing over in high water? Or is it preposterous?
Well, I mean, I don't know what your opinion of Congress is, but mine is that it's impossible to get anything through those, but that's where it would have to be. It was not something that Connecticut does. It has to come through Congress. So.
Beyond our scope.
I think it is. I think it is.
You also have something about pursue, appropriate means for, reducing the volume of sand and
I mean,
yeah, why not? Why not say something like that?
Theoretically,
Yeah,
they would have, wouldn't they save money on dredging if they kept the sand on one side from washing over by increasing the height by 3 feet?
I think you're absolutely right.
I
the
mean,
dredging project cost, I forget what it cost,
$1.5 million?
1.8, I think.
1.6, something like that.
1.6,
Well, maybe they got an extra 200,000.
Yeah, and then she had to come up with an extra, and they left before they ran out of money. I mean,
And so, I don't know what it costs to make a jetty taller, but, I mean, it's basically adding rocks to it, right? I mean,
I'm not a mason, but it would seem to me,
you just gotta throw more rocks on it.
You also have the issue whether the country club would, one of the issues about maintaining the jetty was if we were to move sand away from the base of the jetty on the country club side. The country club objected to that some years ago because it changes the appearance of their beach.
Well, I think you're right. I think it's worth saying.
It's no doubt a complex matter, but so is dredging.
Support efforts to.
Yeah, I mean, this jetty was built how long ago when?
200 years.
And we know that it really hasn't been as effective as its designers wanted it to be.
Yeah.
We could address that conceivably.
Would that then go back to, on the inner harbor section of this, where there is federal jetty, we had maintenance and repair, would it be like maintenance, repair, replace, or renovate or something?
Renovate,
I like that.
renovate.
Yeah,
And,
I like that.
You know what I mean, not in the country club, but in the federal jetty
Yeah.
part of the document.
Maintenance, repair, yeah.
Wyoming is filled with rocks.
Yeah. Well, so is a lot of Connecticut.
But the jetty has never been maintained. That's
Right.
the issue. So if it was maintained properly, when sand built up against it, it would be moved back.
So I don't see any downside to saying maintain and renovate.
Yeah. We're looking
Support efforts to maintain, renovate,
Or replace.
or replace.
or replace, yeah. I mean, we're looking
I mean,
25, 30 years
We're
out.
looking way out, yeah. Who knows?
Who expected this?
Right. Okay, Sasko Beach.
And for Sasko Beach will probably stay away from identifying it as owned by the country club.
Oh, God. Yeah. I think so.
But what about saying something about continued use as a staging area for, supporting continued use as a staging area for federal?
That was the comment that I had, although I had it broad, so I would support efforts to mitigate sand migration over federal jet or channel to the harbor. That would be the town efforts, right, whatever that is. So I wasn't saying specifically use it as a staging area, but whatever the efforts would be to support.
But we had the agreement with the country club that equipment used to maintain the harbor can pass over the country club beach and Sasko Beach. You might want to say something about that.
Well, I think, again, why not?
Mhm.
Why not? And as is distinct from maintaining supporting the town efforts to keep the sand from heading west.
Well, so maybe that's around the beach and the seawall, which is support agreement between town and country club to,
Continued agreement with the.
Yeah.
to maintain sand and federal jetty.
Kenzie Point?
Well, I think we want to make clear in the plan that there's only one dock, whatever that condition of approval was, pursuant to the subdivision approval.
Right.
I did have a question on this too. The no gas-powered boats, I understand the environmental aspect of that, but I thought there was a shellfish aspect to the propellers or something, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
does it have to be gas-powered if somebody had
Electric?
an electric or a solar or whatever, but if they're spinning a prop or something there, you know?
That's a very good point.
For jet, in other words, jet propelled boats.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was really, my recollection is the allowance was for, what, like human power or something, but
Yeah.
nothing was gonna be
Yeah,
permanently worth there.
right. Why don't we say that? I mean, because those boats would stir up,
Mm-hmm.
right?
There, I can just imagine the people at Kenzie's Point hiring the same attorney in
Oh, of course, they will.
Greenwich.
It's inevitable. It's inevitable.
Property owner has a littoral right to work out.
Yep,
You can't, the town has no authority to take that right away from them.
right.
See you in court.
Yeah, or in a special meeting of the Harbor Management Commission, usually accompanied by a request for documents. So, and I think we should say no docks that don't, I mean, we don't want docks that don't attach to land either.
No, that's the Greenwich case.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
Harbor Commission in Greenwich didn't make a finding on the dock. They said, well, we want to know what DEEP's policy is for docks that don't attach to the land. DEEP didn't address or respond to the Harbor Commission's comments. The property owner who challenged the decision argued, among other things, that DEEP didn't address the Harbor Commission's comments. DEEP then said it didn't have to, because there was nothing in the harbor management plan that talked about docks that don't attach to the land. Very interesting.
and I remember when you mentioned that, when Deep was down, we went to see the place, and Deep was there, and Sue Jacobson was walking with us, and you said, yeah, we don't even want docks that, we might get a dock that doesn't attach to land, and she looked at you and she said, shh. So let's be clear, we don't want any docks, except the one that was permitted by the town. No other kind of docks. Southport Beach? I mean, that's the far end of our jurisdiction.
Well, we should see what Parks and Rec may have for long-term, the same thing as a managed according to the beach profile or the beach
Okay,
management plan. Maybe talk with Justin about some of the things that they may have. Although Justin's the marina manager.
Yeah, Sasko Brook.
Sasko Brook,
Well, I think that, there's the Sasko Brook watershed-based plan.
okay,
The commission is on record as, when that was signed as an agreement, as supporting that. And that has to do, like what you said in the Mill River. Oh, we need to reference the Mill River watershed-based plan too. To reduce upstream sources of bacteria and pollutants. Forgot about that. And the same way in Sasko Brook with the bridges that cross the brook.
and the bridge, yep,
To repair and replacement of those bridges should result in improvements in water quality, improvements in runoff and avoiding direct discharges.
There is a dam on Sasko Brook, right underneath the post road, or right around the post road.
That dam was breached and there's no plans to restore it.
okay. Do we, might there be a plan in the future?
I don't believe so. I believe that, well, we should check and see. My thought was that, my understanding is that it's a natural flow now, and that's what DEEP wants to maintain.
Yeah.
Deep wants that, okay,
And there used to be a pond on the other side, and that's gone, it's now a meadow.
okay,
Bulkley Pond.
Oakley Pond, kayak up into there, and you can't go any further. It's a dead end.
shellfish resource areas? I mean, so far that's just Sasko Beach, right? That's,
No, there's a private there's some,
or those areas that are leased out?
yes.
Okay,
And I think you can reference and support the Shellfish Management Plan for the
Okay.
Shellfish Commission.
We don't have to worry about Pine Creek, even though Harbor Master now patrols it, that's not our border to worry about.
our jurisdiction doesn't include Pine Creek,
I just wanted to double check,
yeah.
but Harbor Master hangs out there now.
We haven't said anything about outer harbor moorings. Did we preclude outer harbor moorings in the
Yeah.
rules and procedures?
Yeah, we did, by Kenzie Point. We said no outer harbor moorings because of weather. Nothing out there.
Well, I could see a
Oh,
representative of the Kenzie Point property owner saying,
absolutely.
you've taken away all my rights for
Yep.
access.
It's gonna be a nasty lawsuit, I'm afraid. But we had, our reasoning had to do with the weather, as I recall. It just didn't make, of course, at the time we did the rules, there was no development out there.
Yeah.
But that's also out there, that's also shellfish, where the shellfish beds are, so,
Yeah, we have to get the map of the shellfish beds.
yeah,
And forget where the shellfish jurisdiction line goes, but it probably goes from here over to there. The jurisdiction between the Shellfish Commission and the state,
okay.
because that line goes from headland to headland.
So it would be weather and shellfish
Yeah.
would be reasons why there are no moorings on the outer
Something to
harbor.
check on.
Yeah, of course.
And Doug, I didn't send to you electronic copies of these old Howard Burr photos, because I was trying to put them into like a story, and I haven't finished yet. Sorry about that.
All good.
Anything we've missed, any ideas that you have that we haven't?
No, I actually thought your list was amazing.
Yeah, very comprehensive.
Very good discussion.
Do we, I know we've talked a lot about the Shellfish Commission and how we cooperate with them. Just south of all there are commercial beds.
Right.
Lots of commercial beds.
Right.
We need, is there any, I can't recall that we've had any interaction with Bloom Brothers or anybody like that.
Well, we haven't, I don't think. I know that the Shellfish Commission does.
So,
We also have a provision in the plan about the reason that a third of the moorings each year are inspected to be removed
Right.
was to enable shellfish harvesting in the harbor. I don't know that that's ever happened, but I don't think we want to remove that.
No, I agree.
Did you go to the shellfish clinic today?
I did not. I heard, however, that it was a huge success. There were several hundred people,
Oh, gosh.
and they ran out of chowder.
Oh,
it's a good problem.
And on a rainy, cold Saturday morning, they were pretty excited about that.
now just a copy of the Blessing of the Fleet program if you're interested.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't be there.
So is there anything else we need to do to conclude? Anything else you want to say? Because we're going to let Jeff go on his own for a couple of months?
Very good.
Yeah, I think we,
So,
We also have to provide a report to the Port Authority about what we've done so far.
okay,
With the work on the plan. That was one of the things that the person called, asked about.
okay,
I said, we'll work on that.
okay. So do we have a
He
deadline or
didn't say anything. The first deadline, we've got to get the money back.
the money back, right?
For the ship, for the grant, for the dredging.
Is it too onerous to ask you if we could have that done by the end of the summer? To have the report to the Port Authority?
Oh, yes, that's not.
Okay,
Just explain, without Betty, I don't know how we're gonna do some of
Yeah.
these things.
I know.
Because we need the accounting of, what but we'll figure it out.
is
Someone's
there,
gonna have to help
yeah,
us.
I've
Certainly.
asked if there was a successor plan for Betty and so
No,
forth.
they don't
I got
know.
no answer.
They have no one yet. Betty had mentioned several times how helpful Caitlin Bossy was. Maybe she can,
Well, I've talked with her before the meeting.
okay,
In fact, that was the phone call to Port Authority. They're gonna contact her directly.
Oh, great.
Now,
great,
with the understanding that I talked with her earlier today.
Good.
And that
Good.
they're expecting her to take care of the, return of the grant money.
but I'm wondering if Caitlin couldn't help us identify
Because Betty put that, the monies that were spent, that attributed to my work, and I don't think it's anything other than my work, and she attributed that to a particular account.
right.
I can call her.
I mean, I would think that Caitlin could identify that, though.
Yes. No, she was quite helpful when I talked.
Yeah,
to her
yeah,
today.
yeah. So I'm gonna conclude this meeting at least,
Yeah.
okay?
Much that we've